Jack McKissock,
Okay.
a.k.a. Jack Trash,
There you go.
a.k.a. Trash.
Yes.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. I've known you for 14 years.
It's
Isn't that
been that
crazy?
long?
It's been that long.
Wow.
We actually met in Fort Myers.
Yes.
You had owned a studio
Mhm.
where people came in with bands of all shapes and sizes
Right.
to rehearse.
Mhm.
And I think, wasn't like AC/DC one of your bigger clients?
They were the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there was a giant room.
Yes.
And then there were little smaller rooms.
Mhm.
And at the time, I was living and working in Fort Myers, and I had a little band. And I think we rented one of the small rooms.
Right.
And it was a beautiful, beautiful place. And it was a wonderful idea because these rooms were individual rooms that you could lock, and they were air conditioned,
Yes.
and you could leave your gear there.
Mhm.
So if you wanted to rehearse, you just show up, put your key in, go in your room, get your bandmates. Electricity was given to you, and it was great.
It was a fantastic idea. And I stress the word idea because the day we opened was, and this has nothing to do politically, but the day we opened, it was President Obama had just taken office, and he went to the 5 hardest hit markets by the recession. And on Tuesday, which is the day we opened, he drove right by my studio and shit.
Why did he do that?
Because he was coming to Fort Myers because it was the hardest hit
Fort
market.
Myers had been hit that hard.
Yes.
Wow.
So I went, ooh, band guys aren't all that great at paying their bills on time. And yeah, so
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I love the idea. I love the
yeah,
concept.
it was a great idea. It was just an idea that wasn't thought through properly.
But it was funny because you and I hit it off really quickly and became
yeah.
good friends. We had a mutual friend,
Mhm.
gentleman named Jim.
Yep.
And I remember at the time I was doing guitars. I owned a company called Scream Guitars. It was a little novelty company.
Right.
And I think we had done some collaborations together or some things of that nature.
Yep.
And we met some people that we all knew in common, and we became a little clique.
Yep.
And you and I became friends. And then many years later, I guess you moved to Sarasota first.
Probably, yeah.
And then I ended up moving to Sarasota, and we reconnected.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Bridge walking.
I remember those days.
Yes.
So it's funny because I haven't done a bridge walk in a while.
Neither have I, obviously.
Yeah, I'm due. I'm certainly due for it. But those were the good days.
Yeah.
So Jack and I used to walk up and down the bridge, and we used to talk about our favorite bands. And we would. One of the things I would always say to you was, "What do you think the greatest rock and roll band is?"
Right.
And the wonderful question about that, or I guess the idea behind that, is that there's so many different bands
Sure.
that you could say.
Sure.
And I think the one that I settled on was AC/DC.
Okay. Very good. Very good.
And do you remember the one that you were talking about?
Well, mine is going to be Journey, as long as it's got Steve Perry singing.
Right.
Now, not so much, but
Right.
but with Journey with Steve Perry singing was it for
And
me.
it's funny because of all my friends, whenever a Journey song comes on, I think of you because I know how much of a Journey fan you are.
Yeah.
And you're so passionate about Journey.
Mm-hmm.
And you're a Stephen Perry, huge Stephen Perry fan.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I'm going to see Journey tonight.
Yeah.
And I said to the person I'm going with, my friend Jack wouldn't come here because he wouldn't want to support the new singer.
Well, that's not true. I mean, I would go, but mainly because Journey has been replaced by Def Leppard, so they're now my favorite.
Yeah.
So
that's right. The same ticket. Yeah.
you're right. Exactly.
I think it's Cheap Trick.
Yep.
Def Leppard, Journey is the order.
It's Def Leppard's headlining.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's huge because normally Journey would have headlined many years ago, don't you think?
If Steve Perry was in the band, they would.
Yeah.
But Def Leppard's changing up the set, which is cool. They're doing some songs they never did before.
Well, the funny thing about Def Leppard, to me at least, is that they seem like two bands to me because their older stuff is, you don't hear much of it, and it's completely different to me than the new, more popular radio stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess there's a third section of them. I guess they have newer stuff out now that I haven't necessarily listened to.
Yeah.
But another great thing about you is that of all my friends, you are the most knowledgeable about music,
Okay.
rock and roll. No, I kid you not, man.
All right.
When it comes to bands,
okay.
musicians,
Yep.
records, songs,
Yep.
tours. One time you told me about all the different members that were in Deep Purple.
Yeah.
Right. And that was like a whole afternoon of conversation of who's who and where they go. And where they don't.
There was a time when I could link, you do the 6 degrees of separation from Kevin Bacon, that I could do almost any band from either Deep Purple or Black Sabbath. Not so much anymore, but I mean, I could do in the early 90s. Up to then I could do it. Yeah.
Well, today we're going to talk about your passion for music and how much you love music.
Mhm.
We're going to talk about your career. You know, again, we talked about the Journey, about how much you love Journey.
Mhm.
You had told me that that was your first concert.
Journey was my first concert. Yeah, it was 41 years ago last week, July 2nd, 1982 at the Rose Bowl.
Isn't that amazing?
I still have the shirt.
And you can clearly remember probably walking in, finding your seat.
Oh,
Right.
I also have a podcast, and we just did this whole story on there. But yeah, my dad paid for the tickets, which were like $15, and he had two of his employees that he had no idea were potheads take me to the show at 16, and yeah, it was great. We parked on a golf course. It was crazy.
So back then you were living in Huntington Beach, California,
Mhm.
correct?
Yep.
Okay, so you were 16, so that was your first concert.
Yes,
That's pretty impressive.
that was a good one.
And the Rose Bowl is huge.
Oh, and people don't realize how huge the Rose Bowl is. I mean, it's massive. There had to have been 120,000 people there.
So after the concert, you were hooked on Journey. That was your.
Well, I was hooked, but I was hooked on Journey before then, but I was hooked on live shows after that because Aldo Nova was the first band to actually come on. And we were sitting in one end zone. Of course, the stage is in the other end zone. And I thought my heart was going to come through my chest with the bass drum because I had never heard anything that loud before. So it was cool. There was all kinds of, I've spoken to members of all the bands that played that show, and Aldo Nova got hit in the knee with a cantaloupe, like second song. And
So could I interrupt for a second?
yeah,
Who brings a cantaloupe to a concert?
I don't know.
And then actually throws it on
and
stage?
it has that good of aim with it. That's I mean, that's pretty good. The guys in Triumph, they were the second band on. They came off the stage and they said, I remember that show quite well because we came off the stage and there's Angie Dickinson and there's Tom Selleck and there's all these stars were there to see Journey. But so that was there. Blue Oyster Cult was the next band, and Robbie Krieger came out and they did Roadhouse Blues.
Was this like a Cal Jam type of thing? Like it was just
It was four bands.
Wow.
Yeah. And then and I never heard a crowd make such a noise. I'm a big sports fan too, so I've been to a lot of sporting events. Never heard a crowd so loud as when Robbie Krieger came out to do that song with them. And I was, of course, being the Journey fan, I was like, oh, there's no way Journey's going to be able to do this. Da, da, da. Well, yeah, they Journey like 50 times that noise when they came out. But yeah, it was the first show that they ever did separate ways.
Wow.
Mhm.
Which that was a monster record.
Yeah, and that was before Frontiers had ever come
Yeah.
out.
Wow.
Yeah.
So growing up in California, you saw a lot of really, really good acts. And you were seeing live music when it was truly an epic event, meaning that like there was no pre-recordings, there was no tapes, everything was live, right?
Mhm.
And it's like if you liked the band, you had to go to the show
Mhm.
because perhaps, you know, I guess was MTV even playing videos back then or
Yeah.
was it
Yeah.
so but you really needed to be there to really get it as opposed to, you know, other means of listening to
Right.
music.
So the first radio station that I worked for was KNEC, which was the first hard rock heavy metal station 24 hours a day in the planet.
Now, how old were you there?
I was 21.
Okay, so it was like your first job in radio?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we would go to the Sunset Strip. I saw the sunrise on the Sunset Strip many times. But we would see all the local bands, you know, at that time, Jacked Up would have been Guns N' Roses or Poison or, you know, Motley Crue was already signed at the time, but there was tons and
So
tons.
it was
of
the hair
bands.
metal.
Yeah, we didn't call it that, but yeah. There was, well, you've been to,
Would you say it was 1990, more or less?
no. This was 80, 86, 87.
Okay, so that was the height of it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. If you've been to the Sunset Strip, you know, it goes from the Whiskey all the way up to what was then called Gazzarri's.
Yes, I remember those.
Okay.
places.
So it's not even a mile, you know,
The
and if
Rainbow
you-
Room's in there somewhere.
Rainbow's right in the middle of it. And there Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday nights, there were hundreds of thousands of people on that street. And there were 5 bands in each one of those clubs every night playing original music. And everybody else that wasn't in the clubs was outside handing out flyers.
So the original music that they were playing is now the music that we know on the radio that we've heard.
Absolutely.
That like so the Dr. Feelgood and Kickstart My Heart and all that wonderful stuff, maybe even before that was being played, that was original at that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw Guns N' Roses play at, I believe it was Gazzari's, and they did Patience, and everybody booed.
Wow.
Because it was a mellow song. Nobody wanted the mellow songs.
Right.
Yeah.
Now it's like they
Yeah,
would applaud.
exactly. Now
Crazy.
it's a huge hit.
So you were there at the height of it. That's so cool. I mean, you probably even saw rock stars just walking around the street.
Oh, yeah, always.
You know?
Yeah.
Now, being that you were at the radio station, you had the inside track too. So you probably got into places and got to go behind scenes that most people couldn't go to.
Yeah. Radio is, I am a multi-millionaire when it comes to memories, experiences, and friends.
No doubt.
But I'm also a multi-hundredaire because I'm in radio and it doesn't pay any money. But I wouldn't trade the memories that I have for anything.
There's no doubt. And that's what's interesting talking with you, both here today and as a friend walking the bridge.
Right.
Some of the stories you've had and some of the experiences you've had.
Yeah.
Especially at the height of rock and roll.
Oh, sure.
Don't you think that was like the height of the kind of rock and roll that I think today perhaps isn't necessarily the same? It's changed, right? It's not as electric and as alive and as spontaneous as it was back then.
Yeah. No, for sure. For sure. I have a scar. Don't do a close up on this, but I have a scar right here that I got hit in the face with a raw piece of meat from Blackie Lawless from Wasp.
Come on.
Yeah. He used to throw raw meat out at the stage, and I got hit with a T-bone right in the face.
So that's funny.
That's
it's not funny, but it's at the same time now it is.
Great. It was great.
But here's the thing. Back then, I guess these guys had to have gimmicks, right?
Yeah.
I mean, was it really true that Ozzy Osbourne really once bit the head off of some kind of animal, a bird, a bat, or whatever it was?
He did it that wasn't on stage though. He did a bat because he thought it was a rubber bat. But the original one is a dove that he bit the head off in a record meeting to get a record deal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just to show how crazy it was.
Yes.
And I think that that book that came out by Motley Crue,
The Dirt,
that would turn into a movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think it showed scenes of some crazy things that Ozzy would do with some of his bandmates and co-bands and whatnot.
Oh yeah.
So you were living that stuff up and down the street.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what were some other stories from that epic time period?
Well, the easiest way for me to tell a story is name a band, and I'll give you a story.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Okay, so Guns N' Roses, I was always very interested in Guns N' Roses because I read some of their bio stuff and some of their autobio stuff. And the way that they lived and the way that they performed and the way that they came together and some of their history about, their drug issues and, the alcohol stuff. But they were able to come together and be successful.
Mm-hmm.
They were like nomads. Weren't they just like living off the street and kind of like trying to find places to live and places to eat?
That was 90% of the bands. They were all doing. There would have been no Sunset Strip if it wasn't for the girls, because all the girls fed them and all the girls housed them and clothed them and all that kind of stuff, so they could go and play music. If you talk to almost anybody from that time, I would say another 90% of them didn't have a plan B. It was we're going to be rock stars, and most of them didn't. But the ones that really did, I mean, Poison was the greatest club band ever. Every show you would go see Poison, no matter if there was 3 people there or it was packed, it was like you were seeing them at the Forum. They never ever phoned it in. They were always great.
So there's an appetite for this kind of music. So the record companies had executives that went out looking to sign these bands because ultimately they knew they can make money, right? Sure. They can look at a Guns N' Roses or a Poison and figure out a way. They can sign them, get them to make records, sell those records, and make millions and millions of dollars. Right. Because they knew that the mostly the kids at that time were hungry for that sound.
Sure.
So so they became instant millionaires. Some of these guys became really rich really fast, right?
Well, I don't know that the bands became really rich really fast, but the record company sure did. It was David Geffen. All the record companies are right there, so it's not like you have to go across country to see the bands. They're all the record companies are right there. I mean, everybody's seen the Capitol Records building. Geffen Records was right there off the strip, right across from Gazzari's. So it was like David Geffen said, "Get me a Motley Crue," to Tom Zutaut. And he went and said, "Well, I just saw this band, Guns N' Roses, and
Right. I was at Tower Records and I met
Mhm.
a guy. He said he was from White Lion. This is back in like 1989.
Right.
And I remember these guys would hang out at Tower Records, either inside the store or outside the store. Some of them worked there, some of these guys. And they were either selling tickets or handing out flyers
Yeah.
or doing something to promote.
Mhm.
And I remember this guy. He was a tall, skinny guy.
Vito Bratta.
Vito.
Mhm.
Yeah.
If there was a telephone pole, just say, on the strip, there was flyers on it. The telephone pole was twice the diameter that it would normally be because everybody would put their flyers up for their show, and then another band would come by and put more
Isn't
flyers.
that funny?
That's the way that was the original.
Yeah.
That was the original social media.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And wasn't it paid to play? It wasn't like
Yeah,
some of these bands, if you want to play here, you got to pre-sell the tickets.
Yeah. Well, that was you wanted to play whatever at the Whiskey, and the production company would say, we're going to sell you 100 tickets at $12 a piece. So you do the math, that's whatever that is. It's $120 or whatever it is. Then they would go out, the guys would go out, they'd put their hairspray on and all that kind of stuff, and they would go find people to buy those tickets for $15. So if you sold out the tickets that you had, then you made money. And then you would pay whatever the production company was, their money that they sold you, the original one, and whatever was left over, then you got to keep.
Interesting.
Yeah. Nobody liked it. Nobody liked it.
But it taught these guys how to hustle.
Sure.
Make a buck.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk more about the LA scene in the late 80s, early 90s.
Okay.
We're ready. So, Jack, we're back.
Yeah. Wow.
Jack Trash. That's a great name. How'd you get the name Trash, by the way?
So everybody at KNEC had crazy names. There was Thrasher, there was Dangerous Darren, there was all these names. And the first time that I was going out, I was going to be doing a van hit, and I was going to call in. I needed a name. And so the guy just called me Jack Death. And my mom was listening, and she said, no. So my mom said no, which she now regrets, because we ended up going with Jack Trash because it's just a play on the Stones, Jumpin' Jack Flash. But now for the last 30, 40 years, she's been known as Mama Trash. So,
and it's so funny because you're such a clean-cut guy in real life. You know, you don't drink, you don't smoke, you don't partake in the craziness.
right.
So it's funny how Trash people might think, if they didn't know you, that, oh, you're a crazy, trashy,
Right.
rocking kind of guy.
Yes.
You
I tell everybody, they ask me that, and instead of going into that long story, I always just say, it's just short for Trashinsky.
know, that's a good name.
Yeah.
So you were doing a morning show. Was that what your?
I started. I went to the Academy of Radio Broadcasting. There was a commercial on in LA. Do you hate your job? Well, yes, I do. Has everybody told you what a great voice you had? Well, yeah, they kind of have. Come to the Academy of Radio Broadcasting. It was one of those kind of things. So I went, and the first day I was there, a guy I was sitting next to said, Tom Marr is the guy who hires the interns over at KNAC. So the next morning I went to KNAC and I met Tom Marr, greatest promotion director in the history of the world. And luckily the receptionist thought I was cute and let me wait for him to be available. And I went in, and he was talking with Ted Nugent on the phone, getting to do a charity show. And we ended up he was the assistant golf coach at Long Beach State. And we started talking about golf. And he says, well, I'm not ready to hire the interns for another couple months, but since you only have 1 day experience, I'll bring you in. And so I went in, and I just helped the van driver. And then I think it was like 4 days later, he quit. I said, I'll do it. So I got my paid gig. the first week that I was in that I'd been to school, which is the whole reason you go to school is to get a job. So it was like, I don't think I
So
need to go
timing
back.
is everything, and you were in the right place at the right time.
Yes, for sure. For sure. And then we had a program director change. And well, no, what happened was the program director was leaving. We had the Christmas party. I was the only guy at the Christmas party that was sober. And the program director goes, I'm leaving anyway. You go on the air. And I did midnight to 6.
So your very first time.
Mhm.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then we had a new program director came in. I was helping her move in. And she said, you didn't tell me you were on the air. I said, well, I was on the air once. And she says, midnight to 6, Monday through Saturday and Sunday. Those are your shifts. And
Now, did you record it at home or have someone record it so you can hear yourself? Because back then, right? How would you have heard yourself?
What happens is if you have a cassette player in the cassette deck, if you know what a cassette is, once you turn the microphone, it would start to record. So that's an air check. That's what we call an air check. And so it's just when the microphone is hot is when it comes on.
So how excited were you to be at that young age to have done a couple of these midnight to 6 a.m. shows, man?
Oh, it was.
You must have been giddy.
I was for sure. And I'm doing it. And not only, most people in radio start in Tuna Fish, Wyoming, or, Podunk, Texas, or something like that, and then work their way up. And here I am. I'm getting my start in Los Angeles.
At one of the best rock and roll stations on the planet.
For sure.
Where all the rock stars lived in LA.
Yep.
So you probably saw a lot of rock stars coming into the station.
Oh God, yes.
To do their promo work and all that kind of great stuff.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, it was good. It was a good time.
So how long were you on the air there?
I was on the air there from 80, well, I guess January of 80 or December of 87 to 94.
So that's a good 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good run.
Yeah. Yeah. And I did the midnight to 6. And then we had a show called Radio Cat House with Ricky Rackman, who was on MTV doing Headbangers Ball at the time. And I co-hosted it with him. And then the guy Thrasher was our morning show guy. He left and came back. And when he came back, he was the whole reason I got into radio to start with.
Well, I met him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great guy.
Great guy.
Great guy.
So
Trash and Thrash.
Thrash and Trash. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I ended up co-hosting with him for the last part of that I was there. He is my mentor.
Great.
Yeah.
You guys still stay in touch?
Yes. Yes.
Now, the responsibilities of a DJ back then were different than they are today.
Yes.
Could you explain that like what you did back then versus what you do today?
Okay. So back then, everybody wonders why a radio shift is only 4 hours or 5 hours. The reason is back then it was like flying a plane. You had to do everything manually. So if it was a song on a CD, you had to load the CD up. Commercials came on a thing called a cart, which kind of looks like an 8-track, and you had to manually fire them from the board.
So you're by yourself doing all this.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you had we had turntables in that studio because some stuff wasn't on CD yet. That's how long ago it's been. And you'd have to cue those up and get ready to play those. And then if you wanted to put a phone call on the air and our listeners were prone to saying the word fuck, we'd have to cut that tape. So you'd have to go in with a razor blade and cue it up and listen to it. And all this stuff's going on while the music's playing. So, it was exhausting by the time we were done. Now, at the radio stations that I work now, I watch a computer and it comes down. Oh, I got to talk right there. And then I open the mic and I talk right there and then turn it off.
AI has gotten involved.
Yes, absolutely.
But back then, is it safe to say that you were picking the songs?
No.
So it was always somebody would say to you, "This is what we need to play."
Yeah.
Why was that? Was it because these were they were being paid by the companies to play these songs?
No.
There was promotional ties involved. Like, why was somebody predetermining? And who was that person that would predetermine?
That would be the music director would take the new songs, say the new songs, and say, we really need to play this Sleaze Bees song to the program director. They would listen to it. They would have a meeting. They would go, okay, that's it. So there's different categories of songs. So, there's a gold category, which is your older stuff. That's, your Deep Purple, your, Black Sabbath songs. And then there's the different categories for current songs. So, and you only want to play, if I go in and I go, man, I really want to play this new Jet Boy song, but the guy before me just played it too, and I don't know that because I wasn't listening, then you have songs that just keep repeating. So it's a way to keep the it's a way to keep the the spread going. So you're doing it that way. And I wouldn't want to pick the songs anyway. I mean, that's just way too much work.
But didn't you one time play a song? Didn't I one time ask you? I called in or something at one time, and when you were at the Shark, and I said, "Hey, I want to hear Tesla or something," and somehow you able to get it on or it came on.
Yeah, this is the Santa Claus moment. If you don't want to know this, just kind of mute this for a second. There is no such thing as a request. I just happen to have a Tesla song coming up.
So I was lucky then.
Yeah, you were lucky. Right place, right time.
So that leads us to today. So right now you're with 98.7 The Shark, which is Tampa Bay's classic rock, which is a fantastic station. I listen to it whenever I can. I have the app now set up on my my little computer in the truck, right? My Apple CarPlay.
Yep.
So I can just tap the icon and it comes on automatically.
Nice. Yeah, I do 7 to midnight, Monday through Friday, and then I'm on the afternoons and the weekends. I also am on in Detroit at WCSX on the weekends, and then I do a segment called Trash Talk at a station called The Drive in Las Vegas.
So something like that, like Trash Talk, okay? You record that in advance and then it airs, or how does that work?
I record it. It's mostly interviews that I've done with rock stars, and then I put it together. It's like a 90-second feature, and I just send it in an email off to them, and they air it.
Okay, so is it like they air it the same day every week at the same time? So you have
no, it's in rotation.
I gotcha.
So it runs about 10 minutes after the hour. That's when that comes up. It's part of a whole bunch of other things they have there. Yeah.
Interesting. Let's talk about some of those interviews you've done. Are anyone that jump out at the top of your head? Any of these great interviews that you can talk about? Some of your favorite ones you've had?
My favorite guy to interview is Eric Martin from Mr. Big. He's just so. He could also be a stand-up comedian. He's so fun. One time I interviewed Paul Stanley from Kiss, and I started the interview. This was back at KNEC. I started the interview saying, "I've been you for Halloween for the last 10 years."
That's a great opener.
And he said, "Well, that's really cool." And I said to him, because it was on the phone, I said, "How much time do you have?" And he goes, "Well, if you've been me for Halloween for 10 years, you have as much time as you want."
Awesome.
And he talked to me for like an hour and a half.
That's great.
It was really cool. Most everybody that I've talked to has been fantastic.
Speaking of Kiss, you ever speak to Gene Simmons?
Yes.
How'd that go?
Great. Gene is a guy, if you don't know what you're talking about, he'll fillet you on the air. Luckily, I'm a Kiss fan, so I knew what I was talking about. But I've heard him just belittle people.
Well, he's a very serious man, and he's a big marketing guy, and he's a very, very smart man.
Yeah.
I mean, the Family Jewels, sometimes they would show some of the marketing stuff that he does. Yeah. He would go into his office with all those wonderful glass enclosures of all the things that he sold.
Yeah.
And, as a marketer myself, and as, the founder of Jacked Up, I always thought it was amazing how this guy, I think maybe from the day that they put that makeup on, they knew that they had something that they were going to be able to market and sell.
Oh, yeah.
So I have a lot of respect for him and his marketing skills.
Yeah, we did one of the first things I did at KNEC was the premiere of Decline of the Western Civilization, the Metal Years movie. And it was at a theater in Hollywood, and my job was to get the rock stars from their cars and bring them over to Ton, who was our person on the air. And
that was probably a difficult job too.
It wasn't difficult.
Because rock stars like to party and they probably have
but they also want to do press too. So it was kind of like a red carpet thing where I was ushering them over, and Gene was one of the ones. I was like, holy crap, that's Gene Simmons. I'm a huge Kiss fan, but I didn't have time to say that. So we went into the theater, and just the hair on the back of your neck stands up, kind of thing. And Gene Simmons was standing right behind me in the popcorn line going, "Hot dog nachos." that sounds great. I'm gonna have hot dog nachos. and the person he was with said, Gene, that's hot dog or nachos, not hot dog nachos. So I turned around and I couldn't think of a thing to say to him. And so I said to him, where can I get a copy of Music from the Elder, which is the worst Kiss album ever? But he goes, oh, you're the KNEC guy, right? He goes, what's your name? I said, Jack. And he says, I think I got a couple at the office. I'll send you one. And I went, oh my God, I just talked to Gene Simmons. This is amazing. He wants hot dog nachos. This is awesome. I went in, watched the movie, went to the whole thing. And 2 weeks later, I got a autographed copy of Music from the Elder. Yeah.
Well, you're a very witty guy for saying that in the first place.
Well, because
you could have just done the blah, 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 blah,
yeah,
blah. But instead you thought of something clever and you chose an album on purpose that probably wasn't, nobody else would have ever asked for that.
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. But I've every time I go to the movies, I think of him and want hot dog nachos.
That's funny. Have you ever considered writing a book or like putting all these wonderful stories on paper?
No, I've not considered writing a book. Thrasher, who my mentor, he wrote a book, and it's great. I don't know that we'll see. If you get 1 million hits watching this podcast, I'll write a book.
Well, I think you have wonderful stories and I think people need to hear them.
Yeah, well, there we go. We're doing it.
So now you're in Tampa. So there's a big difference now between being in Tampa and Los Angeles, right?
There's a big difference in radio. The station in KNEC was owned by a realtor. Fred Sands was his name. And so it was Flagship Broadcasting. Everything he did was FS. We had a 30-year reunion, I don't know, probably 5-7 years ago now. And it was, and all these people, we hadn't seen each other in that long.
A lot of celebrities, right?
No, it was just
Ricky Rockman was part of that group, right?
Well, he was there, but it was everybody that was, part of the radio station, the people on the air, but all the people that work off the air,
the scenes, gotcha,
yeah, all that kind of stuff. And it took maybe 30 seconds, and it was like we had never left. It's
wonderful.
It's my high school, college family reunion is those people right there.
So is it safe to say it's one of the greatest memories of your life? Those years.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to like replicate that now,
Oh, you can't.
Yeah.
You can't. It's total. Everything's totally different.
But you go to a lot of shows still. I mean, you're always active. Whenever there's a show in town, you're there.
Yep.
And your girlfriend or your fiance is very connected to the music world as well.
She's also from California, and she finds like her favorite band is Def Leppard, and she has met every single person in Def Leppard organically. Like she'll just meet them in a parking lot or something like that. It's crazy, but yeah.
It's so funny because I think on some of her Facebook posts, like there's books that Def Leppard produces books, and like she's in the book. Like, pictures of her. Like
she wrote a story for a book. Yeah.
One time, I'll tell a funny story. So one time she had some tickets that she needed to sell.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Scorpions, I want to say maybe.
Yeah.
So I happened to be available that night. My band was off, and I grabbed my buddy Larry and said, hey, let's go buy these tickets and let's go to Scorpions. Well, turns out they were like the best seats I think I've ever had in my life.
She doesn't go to shows.
I mean, they were like maybe 7 rows back.
Mm-hmm.
So you weren't too close. Center stage. So you were right there. So I'm just basically looking up and watching the show. And it was a great show. If anyone hasn't seen the Scorpions and you get a chance, I didn't know what to expect. I had no idea what to expect. And it was one of the best shows I think I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Not just with the music, but with the lighting, the production.
Yep. They're always great.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about some really, really good shows have you seen lately?
Lately, I saw the final shows of the Mr. Big. They're done now,
right.
and they're not coming back. It's not one of those. That was great. We're going in August. We're going to see Def Leppard. They're playing at the Hard Rock in Hollywood.
No kidding.
Yeah,
they seem to play Florida a lot. It's great.
Yeah, well, I don't know what it is with that Hard Rock down there in Hollywood, but they get the biggest bands to play there.
I saw Aerosmith there many years ago.
Yeah, I mean we saw Leppard and Motley Crue both played there. I mean they're doing a stadium tour and then they go and they play this.
Right.
Shinedown is one of the greatest live bands you ever want to see. They're just so good, and they're one of the newer bands. So yeah.
What are your thoughts when you see a band like Motley Crue, who you've seen in their prime, And then you see them now when they're obviously, they're older and perhaps, there's controversy about whether they are really playing their instruments and people are saying Vince Neil's voice is shot. What are your thoughts on that? Should these guys continue to tour or should they maybe step aside and call it a day?
I would never tell anybody not to make money. So if they want to do it and somebody wants to pay to see it, do it. Do it. I want to see a good show. I would love all the bands to be all original members and everybody play live. It's just never going to happen. I mean, how many people do you know that married their high school sweetheart and are still married to them? Now put 5 alpha males in the same band. How many are going to stay together? It's doesn't work. It just doesn't work. So I always look at it this way. I'm a big fan of Queensryche. Queensryche is the band. Jeff Tate is by himself. I look at it as I'm a child of Queensryche divorce. I get 2 Christmases. I get to see Queensryche when they come. I get to see Jeff Tate when he comes. Yeah.
Well, I know when Van Halen split and then Van Hagar came about, right?
Mhm.
I was one of those few guys that fell in love with the Van Hagar and I went that direction.
Mhm.
Nothing against Roth, and I still listen to the Roth stuff.
Yeah.
But I bought into the new Van Halen and
Yeah.
I love those records.
Me too.
And, the reason why I'm bringing them up is that Sammy Hagar is coming to town with Michael Anthony.
Yep.
Right. So they're going to do a Van Halen tribute.
Right.
So I'm assuming they're going to play not just the Sammy Hagar stuff,
Yep.
but they're going to maybe do some of the older Van Halen
Yep.
stuff as well.
Yep.
And with Joe Satriani on guitar, I couldn't think of a better guy that could probably fill in there and try to do
Right.
Eddie's parts. And then obviously Bonham, Jason Bonham,
Yep.
is on drums. And I saw him recently in Tampa at this. He does a Led Zeppelin experience,
Right.
and it's wonderful because not only does he play these songs with this young hotshot group of musicians,
Yep.
but he tells stories about the songs.
That's good. That's
So
good.
it was an entertaining evening. I really enjoyed that,
Yeah.
and I recommend anybody listening, if you get a chance to see Jason Bonham's Led Zeppelin experience when it
Yeah.
comes to town, go see it
Oh, yeah.
because it sounds note for note. It sounds, and I don't know who the guy is that sings Robert Plant, but he was spot on.
Nice.
But my expectations for this Van Halen tribute is going to be, I have high expectations. I loved Van Halen. That was one of my favorite bands growing up, no
Yep.
doubt.
Mhm.
And I remember being on the 1984 tour of Madison Square Garden. I was sitting center stage on the floor, and I was just blown away by David Lee Roth, at the time, the
Mhm.
greatest frontman.
Okay.
I think at the time.
Okay.
I think many years later we came to realize that guy wasn't really much of a singer,
Right.
but he had Michael Anthony and he had Eddie singing backup, so
Sure.
it worked, man.
Yeah.
And Alex Van Halen's drumming, I've never heard anybody play drums like Alex Van Halen inside of an arena.
Right.
The way that the sound that he made on those drums inside of an arena was very unique to me.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to see this. What are your thoughts about that?
Oh, Sammy's always great. Even before he was in Van Halen, after he was in Van Halen, always a fantastic live performer. He can still sing. He can still hit all the high notes. If you follow him on Instagram, he's a great follow on Instagram, but he just did like 2 weeks worth of videos from them doing rehearsals. And you're going, wow, they're going to do that song. They're going to do that song.
That's what I'm excited about,
Yeah.
man.
It's
We're going to hear things that we probably never heard.
they're doing the song 5150, which they've not done since
Right.
that tour, which is
And
going
if
to be
you're
great.
a Van Halen fan, you know that song.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites.
Right.
So I think that's gonna be great. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
But when David Lee Roth came back and he performed they did some late night television and then they did a tour and then they did a Tokyo Dome live
Right.
album. What were your thoughts on that? Because personally, I didn't care for the way he presented himself and the voice that he had.
Yeah.
He sounded to me very vaudevillian, where he would like talk out some of the lyrics as opposed to singing them. And I just felt like it shouldn't have, I personally thought it shouldn't have happened.
Right.
I mean, it was cool to see him there,
Mhm.
but at the same time, I'm like, wow, man, this is not good.
Yeah. I saw Van Halen with David on 1984 tour. I saw it at the US Festival.
Wow. The US
Uh,
Festival.
Yeah. And one other time. Oh, I saw him on that comeback tour, the first time they did the comeback tour. All 3 times, as much as I love Eddie, and I do, and Alex, and even Wolfgang and whatever, band phenomenal. I felt ripped off seeing him. I love the records. Fair Warning is one of my favorite records of all time, but just every single time I was like, ugh.
So you're not a fan of David Lee Roth live?
No, not
Okay.
not at all. And to go that there's the old saying, I wouldn't walk across the street to see him play for free. You've heard people say that about different things. When they did the Jimmy Kimmel show, I was across the street doing a TV show at that time. And they said, well, you want to just walk over and go see it? No, I didn't.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's not, I don't like the fact that if somebody should sing to tracks, it should be him. But, and he doesn't, and I applaud him for not doing it. I don't understand how he can listen to it and go, wow, I did well there.
Well, to your point earlier, though, if there's a market for it, right, and
Yeah.
people are going to pay big money to see David Lee Roth just so they can see him up there,
Yeah, that's all good. I'm not one of them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I kind of jumped the ship when I saw that happening.
Yeah.
And that Tokyo Dome album is the only one that's not in my collection.
Right.
Of all the Van Halens.
Exactly. And even Ed said, when they did the live record, they put it all in David's hands because Ed said, we sound great every time. You go, we'll let him pick which one he thinks he sounds the best in. Those were Ed's words. So,
well, I just heard recently that Alex Van Halen has decided to sell his drums, and he's seems like he's kind of getting out of the whole rock and roll thing after his brother passed away. And
he's got an biography coming out. It's October 22nd. I cannot wait to read it.
so, what an biography is that when somebody writes a book and then you collaborate with it. So it's like
It's his autobiography and then the biography of his brother. It's called Brothers.
interesting.
It's gonna be good. And I just saw the Behind the Music with Wolfgang.
Oh, that'd be
it's
cool.
on Paramount Plus. It's really good. It's really good.
Are they still making behind the musics?
It's
Like the VH1, the old stuff.
it's the same company is making it. Doesn't have that narrator guy.
The same guy. That guy was great.
Yeah, he was really good.
My favorite one was the one about Rat.
Yeah. All those were, even if I didn't like the band, I would always watch
Sure.
that. But yeah, it's really, really good. And he dives deep into his father's passing, and you can tell it's raw. And the other thing you come away from it is Valerie Bertinelli is the coolest person on the planet.
Yeah, well, Wolfgang was born to be a musical genius, right? Don't
And
you
he
think about it?
is. And he is. I had totally forgotten that he bailed out Tremonti. They were playing a show in New York, and their bass player could not make the show. And they called him because he was in New Jersey. And he went and did the show, and he watched them go through the set once, and he had it.
He's that good.
He's that good.
Well, impressed me when Taylor Hawkins unfortunately passed away.
Mm-hmm.
They did 2 shows for him. I think one was I want to say LA, one was London.
Yep.
And I think the one in London might have been broadcasted.
Yep.
Well, anyway, so Wolfgang comes out playing guitar, and he plays guitar like his father. He's playing Hot for Teacher, and he's doing all the Eddie Van Halen licks. And then you're saying to yourself, wow, well, it makes sense because he probably, as a baby, his father taught him how to do that.
Yeah.
And the look on Dave Grohl's face, Dave Grohl, who's my favorite musician right now. I
Right.
love the guy. Love everything about that guy. He's playing bass,
Mhm.
and he had this beautiful red Fender bass, which I thought was awesome. So Dave Grohl's playing bass, and he's watching Wolfgang shred, and they're doing a couple of Van Halen songs. Did you see that?
He actually that's a big part of the Behind the Music, because Wolfgang said he was never more nervous because he knew that if he messed it up a little bit, his career was done, because there was all that hate that was coming on to him for replacing Michael Anthony. And then the only reason you're doing this is because of your dad, and you're playing to tracks and all that kind of stuff, which he wasn't doing any of that. And he knew that if he missed a note, that his career was done.
Which he didn't.
He didn't.
And he was smiling, having a great time.
Yep.
And it was perfection.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people after that, for weeks and weeks after that, were saying, wow, did you guys see this? Clips are coming up all over the YouTube showing some of those licks he was doing.
Yeah.
It was amazing. Have you ever interviewed Wolfgang?
No, not Wolfgang.
That would be a great interview for you.
No, it would be great.
How would you go about getting an interview like that? Like, how does that work?
I have a team. That's not my team, but I have people that are publicists that I am in touch with, and they will offer me somebody to whether or not I want to interview them. I normally always say yes. Or you can go as far as going to a band's Facebook page and going to their about section, and it will usually say for media requests, and then you just write an email and
So I'm going to ask you a question where I think I might know the answer. What is your dream rock star interview?
Steve Perry.
And I knew that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I knew that.
Steve Perry, I have talked to once for 52 seconds.
Wow.
He
So
was,
you know it's 52 seconds because you recorded it?
nope. I know it was 52 seconds because it was Steve Perry. But he was doing press at KLOS in Los Angeles, and a friend of mine worked there, and she said, would you mind talking to a friend of mine? He's a huge fan. And she called me and she said, Jack, Steve, Jack. And she put me on the phone with him for 52 seconds.
And what'd you talk about?
I was a little girl. I mean, I was I fangirled out so bad. I don't even know what I talked about, but I was high for days afterwards. And she took a picture of him talking on the phone to me. So I have that picture of him talking to me on the phone.
Is it safe to say he has the best, if not one of the best, rock and roll voices of all time?
Yeah, without a doubt.
Right?
Yep.
Because how you emulate that? Like, it's very hard for anyone to copy him and to sing like him.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible.
Yeah. No,
that's why I'm interested tonight to see what this Darnell guy can do, because I've never seen the new Journey and I've never seen Darnell. So I'm interested to see how it plays out.
Yeah. There's, if you have a wave form, a wave of music, right? So it's like, it goes up and down with all the stuff. He sounds like Steve Perry, right? They're like matched. They have same, same, I don't know the word because I'm not a musician, but it sounds like it. But the difference is the little differences in the songs, in the words that he says. So Steve Perry will, like, if you listen to a song like Who's Crying Now, listen to the ends of every single word that he sings, because he pronounces it perfectly. And it's like, whoa.
So maybe Darnell's a glorified karaoke singer. Like, that's how they found him, basically.
Yeah, that's how they found. He was
doing Journey karaoke. He was nailing it.
He was in the Philippines version of Jacked Up, doing Journey songs and Neil Sean song. Yeah,
kind of like the Judas Priest story, wasn't that when they
the rock star?
So okay, well, great. Well, in our closing minutes, I want to ask you, what are some of your favorite albums of all time, A to Z?
My number one album of all time is Journey Evolution.
And what are some of the tracks on there that people would know?
Oh, that people would know would be Love and Touch and Squeezin', Just the Same Way. Those.
Oh, I love those songs.
Yeah, those are on there. My favorite song is a song called Sweet and Simple, which is the whole reason that I got into music in the first place, was just hearing
that one song.
That one song.
I'm gonna have to listen to it when I get home.
Yeah, Steve Perry hits a note in there that will blow your mind, and you'll know it when you hear
cool.
it. Yeah,
very cool.
Def Leppard, Hysteria is another one. I mean, everybody knows all the songs off that one. Queensryche, Operation Mindcrime. Black Sabbath's Heaven and Hell.
Now, the Heaven and Hell one, is that with Ronnie James?
Yes.
Okay. So could you explain real quickly how that all came about? How Ronnie James got involved with that project?
They either fired or Ozzy left. I don't know which is true. And Ronnie James Dio was singing for Rainbow, and Rainbow wanted to go in a more commercial direction. And Ronnie James Dio doesn't sing that kind of stuff. And he met up with the guys in Black Sabbath, and that's how it started. They did 3 records total together, but only 2.
So how would you compare the old Black Sabbath to the Ronnie James Dio?
2 different bands.
But you love them both.
Love them both. Yep. Love them both. Yeah. Heaven and Hell is just an amazing record. So, and then I would put Van Halen's 5150 and Fair Warning together.
Wow.
On that list too.
Great. Those are some great records.
Yeah.
So how could people reach out to you? How could people find you and listen to you and maybe even reach out to you?
I'm on, like I said, I'm on the Shark Monday through Friday from 7 to midnight. I'm on the weekends from 2 to 7.
That's a lot. So you're there. You're basically living at the station, right?
I'm there 7 days a week. I'm there 7 days a week.
And you have to be there, right? You can't, like, it's not a remote thing. You have to physically be at the station at those hours, and you're on the mic.
Yeah. I also do a podcast called Plus One, a rock and roll podcast with Chris McLernan, who is the bass player from Saigon Kick and Cold Sweat. We do kind of like this, only we usually have a guest. You can find it on YouTube, Spotify, whatever. Or I'm on the golf course.
So these are interviews, like in-depth interviews, because I know that some of your questions, I watched one of these, and is you would like to ask to a rock star, what was your first job?
Right.
And then that's not necessarily a music job, but just a job in general.
Yeah.
Someone could say I was bussing tables, or I was selling,
Yeah, it's whatever whatever their interpretation is.
So your show's interesting in the sense that you're going beyond the music in a sense. You're getting to more about the person's character.
Yeah, and it's nice doing it with Chris because Chris is the musician part of it. So he can take those questions. He knows what it's like to be on stage in front of 30,000 people, whereas I'm more the media guy. If you watch the MLB Network, there's a show on there called Intentional Talk, and it's one media guy and one guy that was a baseball player, and then they do interviews with baseball players, and that's kind of where I came up with the idea. And Chris has been great at doing it.
Speaking of baseball, there's another interesting thing about you. Didn't you one time call a baseball game?
I did. It was actually Thrasher and I. We did the Lake Elsinore Storm game, and the guy pitching for the other team threw a perfect game. So we were never invited back
because you were like a jinx, like a bad.
Yeah,
like
exactly. No, it was super fun. It's funny you say that because I talked about that last night. We were hanging out with a guy that played in that league. He was an MLB player for 10 years, and we were talking about that stadium. And I told that story how we did the game, and he's like, "Oh man, that was cool. That was a good place."
Well, outside of music, you love baseball.
Yes.
And you love golf.
Yes.
And you actually are a very good golf player.
I was. I'm not so much anymore, but yeah,
Is it because you're out of practice or like?
Yeah, I just like everything else in this world, golf is very expensive. And again, I work in radio, so being able to get out there and play has been. And I'm at the radio station 7 days a week.
But there was a time, years ago, right? Mm-hmm. Didn't you actually go to college? Weren't you a golfer? Like you were so good, you played. Collegiate golf, right?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't play. I didn't play in school.
Did you do a tournament, or did you?
I played in a U.S. Open qualifier.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I did that, and I set a goal for myself to do it, and I convinced all the salespeople at the radio station that you need to get me on golf courses. I'll take listeners, whatever, and they did it, and that's how I was playing for it 5 times a week because I wasn't paying for it, and I did. I played in the U.S. Open qualifier at University Park here in Sarasota, and shot awful. I think I had it like a 92. I mean, it was terrible, and I never had more fun on a golf course because striving for a dream is great, but the only thing better is actually living it. And for that 18 holes, I was living that dream. And it was amazing. And then the USGA, if you don't finish within 10 shots of the person who qualified, the USGA sends you a letter saying it's basically a "you suck" letter. And I have that "you suck" letter framed.
Well, hey, a lot of rock stars are golfers, right?
Yeah, now they are. Yeah,
Alice Cooper is one that comes to my mind.
Alice Cooper is right now doing a show on Sirius XM about golf with Rocco Mediate, who is a guy who plays on the Champions Tour.
That would be a great way to interview rock stars. You go 18 holes and you're interviewing them as you're playing golf.
I would love to do that.
That could be your next thing.
I would love to do that. Somebody make that happen.
All right, on that note, well, Jack, thanks for coming in.
My pleasure.
It's great having you.
Yeah.
And we wish you the best.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.